Hey, welcome back to Psychotropic Release. Today I want to talk about the rise of polypharmacy, or using multiple pharmaceutical drugs for one single condition or ailment, and how it could be very dangerous for people, especially teenagers, and may lead to more suicidal behavior and psychological harm. This is something I really want to talk about because I've experienced polypharmacy on many different levels. I've experienced this both personally and professionally, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, but I am seeing professionals and people talk about it more and more on the media. So I have had personal experience, years and years of personal experience where I was being overly prescribed pharmaceutical drugs. I've seen firsthand minors as young as 12 taking obscene amounts of pharmaceutical drugs. It was literally my previous job to give out medication to underage clients. So every day I saw the pharmaceutical cocktails that many of the teenagers were on, and it was honestly astounding to me that someone as young as 12 years old could be on 5, 6, 7 different medications at once. And finally, I'm starting to see mental health professionals and individuals come forward with their stories of how harmful being overly medicated can be. So I came across a New York Times article that spoke about a young woman who was prescribed 10 different pharmaceutical drugs within a 7-year period, from ADHD medication to antidepressants to mood stabilizers. She was suffering from the very common mental health issues of ADHD, depression, and anxiety. I have also experienced ADHD, depression, and anxiety my whole life practically, so immediately the story resonated with me. While I got the sense that this article was meant to be shocking to readers, that a teenage girl was being overly medicated for years, it sounds shocking, but I wasn't shocked or surprised at all, especially because I've had a very similar experience throughout high school and college. As I read this article, I found more and more similarities between me and Renee Smith. We both initially began our pharmaceutical journey with ADHD medication, something that would be considered a simple fix nowadays or very mainstream to go on Focalin or Adderall to help with school and studying. But like this young woman, Renee and myself, we both found ourselves really overly medicated, taking way too many drugs that was necessary and most likely caused more psychological harm than good. I wanted to say that now I'm 20 months off of all pharmaceutical drugs. I feel much more level-headed. I have more mental clarity. I lost 20 pounds. I've seen side effects from the medication I was taking for months or years just disappear. And now looking back, I'm appalled by the extensive list of drugs I was prescribed. Many of these drugs I was taking simultaneously, or they overlapped. Again, I do not understand how any professional psychiatrist would put me, a young woman, on all these medications. It just doesn't seem to make any logical sense to me. And yes, while I was suffering from mental health issues, the amount of different drugs I was taking was just over the top. I feel like anyone could look at the list of medications I was on and agree it was completely absurd. And I just want to add that I can confidently say taking anti-anxiety medications like Wellbutrin and propranolol did not help my anxiety. And with that thought, I was on antidepressants for years and still struggled with depressive thoughts and suicidal ideation. So I was taking tons of pharmaceutical drugs and still had significant mental health problems. So it essentially did nothing or made things worse, speaking for myself. But this also seemed to be Renee's experience. Although she was steadily taking antidepressants, she said she never felt relief for her depression. If you haven't watched my video on why antidepressants may be the biggest scam to the mental health field, then I highly suggest you watch it, because I talk more about how the majority of people who take antidepressants continue to experience depression and suicidal thoughts. I will link the video down below in the description box. So, as I said before, the article goes on to say that Renee started taking ADHD medication in 4th grade, and then when she started experiencing depression by 8th grade, her psychiatrist started to dole out pharmaceutical medication as if it was candy. She was taking multiple different antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications at once, sometimes twice a day, not for one medication, but sometimes up to 3 medications at a time. The amount of drugs she was on is absolutely ridiculous, and again, I cannot conceive an explanation that this professional psychiatrist would have for giving a teenager multiple serious drugs, or anyone for that matter who didn't have very severe mental health issues. And I look back to my own experience with my past psychiatrist. She graduated from Yale, and I put my complete faith into her to help me. But fast forward 8 full years of working with her, I have no idea what she was thinking. Because she graduated from Yale, I fully believe she knew what she was doing. But then to see me, someone suffering from moderate anxiety and depression, nothing super serious or unusual, to then proceed to put me on about 8 different medications is beyond me. She also misdiagnosed me as having bipolar type 2 disorder, and then continued to put me on a very serious mood stabilizer, lithium, which is very hard on your body and could cause serious kidney problems and more serious negative side effects, especially for me, because I did not need lithium because I'm not bipolar. So not only did my own psychiatrist put me on a cocktail of medication that messed me up even more than it helped me, she also completely misdiagnosed me for a mood disorder I don't even have. But back to this New York Times article. So not only was this young girl on an ungodly amount of serious psychiatric drugs, she was prescribed drugs that are not recommended for adolescents. She was prescribed Effexor, which is not approved for minors. Side note, I was prescribed Zoloft when I was about 15, 16, which is also not recommended for minors. The amount of research on many different psychiatric drugs which are typically prescribed to adolescents tend to have not undergone enough research to determine the long-term effects on developing adolescent brains. Many of these drugs come with side effects, as I said previously, and these side effects can be severe, including psychotic episodes, suicidal behavior, weight gain, and may even interfere with reproductive development. And I just want to say that again, if you didn't already know, a side effect of an antidepressant can be suicidal thoughts and behavior. When looking at hundreds of data from people under the age of 25 taking antidepressants, it was found that indeed taking an antidepressant can increase suicidal behavior and attempts. People under the age of 25 become twice as likely to harm themselves when taking a high dose or even average dose of an antidepressant. In 2004, the FDA issued a black box warning on antidepressants, indicating that they were associated with an increased risk of suicidal thinking, feeling, and behavior in young people. It's absolutely ridiculous that we go to mental health care professionals trusting that they are indeed the professionals and know what they're doing, but end up putting their very young clients on a laundry list of medication. And this isn't taking Advil or Tylenol. These are really serious medications that have very negative consequences potentially. So to be honest, this just adds to my belief that many mental health professionals just don't really know what they're doing. And that's not to say all mental health professionals, but I'd say the majority. I know what you're thinking, that's a very extreme statement to say, but again, I've read about being overly medicated in this article. I've seen it happen to myself, and I've seen it happen firsthand to many minors that I used to work with. So this isn't an unusual or uncommon experience. And when I see people get put on a plethora of medication, it just tells me that the psychiatrist is unable to understand the real psychiatric issue, or just blatantly doesn't understand the medication that they're licensed to prescribe. It's as if they're just throwing arrows at a target, hoping something sticks, and then just missing the target completely. It just doesn't seem methodical or logical whatsoever. Overall, I think if you see a psychiatrist or you have loved ones that see a psychiatrist, my advice is to not just assume that they know what they're doing because they're a professional. They're human, they make mistakes, and like any industry, there's good psychiatrists and bad psychiatrists. But you really need to take it upon yourself to learn the side effects of the medications you're being prescribed, the dosages, and the interactions between the medications. Don't just blindly take medication from your psychiatrist without thinking for yourself. I think as the psychedelic movement continues, we will hear more and more stories about people being overly medicated on pharmaceutical drugs and them turning to psychedelics for healing purposes instead. So if you want to hear more about holistic mental health and psychedelics for healing purposes, I'd love for you to subscribe, and it would be great if you could like this video if you found it interesting or helpful for you.